The poems that are written, that appear in Zealand were written when I was in school, when I was in grad school mostly, in the early 90s. And a great number of them were generated after the suicide of a boy that I was living with at the time, Joe Bolton, who was also a student and a poet at the same time in the same program. And that had a tremendous effect on me, as you can imagine, and on my writing. Really, everything changed radically in every way, I would say, as a young poet, just sort of figuring it out. And it was recommended to me sort of when I was in the throes of great grief and non-understanding of what was happening, that I remember that I was a poet and that I was a student of poetry, and to sort of embrace that and use that, both to cope with my grief and freak out, and to cope with being a poetry student. So I let one sort of inform the other as best as I could. And yeah, I would say several poems evolved out of that experience. I never liked it when somebody would say, oh, you can get a good poem out of it. That seemed like a pretty cheap and weird thing to say under those circumstances, but I think it was sort of true. I did have some poems before Joe died, and I would share them with him. One poem I had written, I don't even remember the poem at all, but I had the expression deep sorrow in the poem. And I had that phrase in quotation marks for some reason, implying, I guess, some sort of sarcasm. And I was explaining this poem to Joe, and I said, well, here I have the words deep sorrow, and it's in quotation marks. And he said, well, it fucking well better be. Apparently he wasn't fond of the sincere form of the expression deep sorrow. He thought that was ridiculous. So after he died, I wrote a poem entitled Deep Sorrow in quotation marks. And the epigraph is, well, it fucking well better be. Joe Bolton saying so. And this is in numbered parts, I think. Yeah, they are. Or it is. 1. In line by the tabloids and spearmint and acids, some kid started juggling tangelos. His mom was a true bitch about it. She said, why don't you quit throwing them fruits, Emilio? The cashier and the bag boy been flirting. This paused. Both of these people were male. I was thinking, God damn, my ass is immense. I'd only some Kleenex and Riesling, but I was quality ogling the child with his auspicious, bright, round meats. A bizarre taste of gin came to me. A bizarre group of stemware flew past me. I considered the purchase of ice. These are sort of inside references to Joe's alcoholism and his preferences when he would drink. He would say sometimes, I need to purchase some ice. Actually said it in a southern accent, which I don't recall. And I haven't seen this poem in a long time. This reminds me of one of his favorite things to say. Part 2. God, it's a swell night to be an asshole, he said, and flexed his long hand above the great oranges. The glasses had flamingos. Nights were novels, soaked. The neighborhood learned about Clapton. If somehow it rained, he'd hate it. 2 nights, of course, sleeping in his bathroom. Many nights, politesse, unbearable pornography. 1 night, bludgeoning furniture. These are memories of life with Joe. Not too good. Part 3. When, later, I put on some clothes and went out, dated a painter, I said, "Oh man, amigo, I'm sorry. My real love has shot all the best of his head out. I've spent the whole day at the Presidio Grill with an autopsy graph and a waitress. The soup had so much butter." He said, "Well, all right, just tell me if it has changed you or what. And make it swift now, honey." The highballs or stripes clacked in their chassis. The bartender beamed at his chip rack. "Emilio, let your mama take her long, loud naps outdoors sometimes. Lift the grass-green flamingos above your bare, hot heads and consider your footfalls in the counting umbilical summer."